Most airplanes are designed to fly faster. This one was designed to fly slower than a bicycle. In the late 1950s, West Germany built an aircraft so strange, so over-engineered, and so completely obsessed with cheating the laws of physics that pilots generally thought it might kill them. It looked like someone bolted two backwards engines onto a perfectly innocent airplane, then decided to point the propellers at the ground. And somehow, it actually worked. Most stories have another side. This one's just a little stranger. I'm Bill, and this is Buffalo Air Park. Let's dive in. Back in the late 1950s, West Germany had a problem. Military planners were convinced that if World War III ever broke out, conventional airfields would be destroyed almost immediately. Bomb the runways, and suddenly, your entire air force is stuck on the ground. So engineers started chasing a bizarre idea. What if you could build an airplane that behaved more like a helicopter? And that brings us to one of the strangest aircraft Germany ever produced, the Dornier Do-29. At first glance, the Do-29 almost looks normal. Almost. It was based on the Dornier Do-27, a rugged little aircraft already known for excellent short-field performance. Dornier engineers reused much of the original airframe to save time and money, which sounds sensible right up until you see what they did next. Because the Do-29 looked less like a transport plane and more like a Cold War engineering fever dream. The military wanted an aircraft capable of extreme STOL performance, short takeoff and landing, something that could operate from rough dirt roads, forest clearings, or tiny hidden strips far away from traditional air bases. So, Dornier partnered with the German Aviation Laboratory and revisited an old concept dating back to World War II. Engineer Heinrich Facke had once proposed an aircraft that used tilting propellers to create downward thrust during takeoff and landing. The idea never flew during the war, but Dornier decided to see if it actually worked, and this is where the airplane gets wonderfully weird. The engineers literally cut apart a Do-27's wing and widened it to support two large engine nacelles mounted far away from the fuselage. Then, they installed two Lycoming piston engines under the wings, facing backwards. The aircraft used pusher propellers instead of the normal tractor setup, but the truly insane part was that the rear sections of the nacelles could rotate downward by as much as 90 degrees, meaning the propellers could point almost straight at the ground. Imagine standing near a runway watching this thing slowly approach while both propellers angle downward like some giant mechanical insect. Now, if that sounds dangerous, it absolutely was, because at extreme low speeds, a twin-engine airplane can become uncontrollable if one engine fails. Normally, that's already bad enough. But with downward vectoring thrust, now you're entering test pilot updating his will territory. Dornier's engineers knew this could become fatal almost instantly, so they built an elaborate interconnecting system linking both engines together through drive shafts running directly through the wing. If one engine failed, the remaining engine automatically powered both propellers. It was brilliantly over-engineered. And because apparently that wasn't stressful enough, the aircraft also used counter-rotating propellers to reduce torque effects. By the time all this experimental hardware was installed, the Do-29 became far heavier than originally planned. Early concepts imagined carrying several passengers. That idea disappeared quickly. Instead, the aircraft became a single-seat flying laboratory. And Dornier clearly understood the risks involved because they redesigned the nose into a giant helicopter-style glass bubble so the pilot could see downward during steep low-speed approaches. And sitting right in the middle of that bubble canopy, a Martin Baker D8 ejection seat, which is usually a pretty solid sign that the engineers themselves weren't entirely relaxed. On December 12, 1958, Dornier chief test pilot Heinrich Schaefer took the first prototype into the air. And on paper, the numbers sounded unbelievable. Engineers predicted the aircraft might remain controllable at just 13 knots. That's around 15 miles per hour for a fixed-wing airplane. But then reality showed up, because the moment the propellers tilted downward, airflow over the tail surfaces started disappearing. Without enough air flowing over the rudder and elevators, the aircraft became unstable at extremely low speeds. The real minimum controllable speed ended up closer to 38 knots. Still incredibly slow, but nowhere near the almost hovering performance they originally hoped for. And the pilots quickly became cautious. Technically, the nacelles could rotate a full 90 degrees, but test crews reportedly refused to push them beyond about 60 degrees because the aircraft became increasingly unstable the slower it flew. Then there were the landings. Applying downward thrust created a massive nose-down pitching force, so the pilot had to pull aggressively back on the controls during approach. To people watching from the ground, the Do-29 looked like it was moments away from crashing every single time it landed. And somehow, it still worked. The aircraft could take off in roughly 80 meters, about 262 feet, and land in only 45 meters, under 150 feet. For the late 1950s, those numbers were remarkable, but despite the promising results, the Do-29 never entered production. 2 prototypes were built and flown, a third was planned but never completed. In 1962, the second aircraft was lost during testing, while the first prototype continued flying until the program quietly ended in 1963. But honestly, calling the Do-29 a failure completely misses the point. This aircraft wasn't built to become operational. It was built to answer dangerous questions about thrust vectoring, low-speed stability, and transition flight. And the data gathered from this strange little aircraft directly helped Dornier develop the even more bizarre Dornier Do-31, the world's first jet-powered VTOL transport aircraft, or sometimes I hear people say VTOL. So, in a strange way, this awkward little experiment helped push vertical flight technology forward. Today, the surviving Do-29 still sits inside the Dornier Museum Friedrichshafen in Germany, still wearing its original markings, and still looking like somebody challenged a team of engineers to build the weirdest airplane imaginable. And honestly, I kinda love that. Because aviation history is full of aircraft that look ridiculous right up until the moment somebody realized they mattered. And that wraps up another tale from aviation's stranger side. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies.